Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Alpha's Stepmate. Last episode. Chapter 36. A tough decision. Dimitri's POV. She wasn't going to take that plant. If something happened and she wasn't able to mind link me, I would lose my shit. But on the other hand, her powers made her sick. She was hurt because she was trying to help me. How could I let her be in pain when there was a solution to it all? I have that lunch with the Lunas today, Maddie said as she tried to get up. I growled and pulled her back to my chest. She was crazy if she thought I would let her get out of this bed. It's way past lunchtime, Mads, Will said. It is almost 6 p.m. Maddie mumbled. You should have woken me up. Like I would have let you go, I said, growling again. You heard what Oliver said. You need to rest. Don't worry about it, Mads, Ellie said. I talked to the Lunas and I arranged for breakfast tomorrow. I told them you weren't feeling well and they completely understood. Oh, she wouldn't be going to that either. She was going to spend the day in bed. She was going to rest and I wouldn't let her do anything or go anywhere until I was completely sure that she was okay. She isn't going, I said, making both Maddie and Ellie look at me. She is going to rest. I have to go, Dimitri, Maddie said. I made them a promise. I growled and wanted to argue, but Ellie interrupted me. We will see how she feels in the morning, okay, she said, giving me a knowing look. I know you want to make sure that she is okay, but she has obligations, Dimitri. She will go if she is feeling well. I raised my brows at Ellie. She really had some nerve telling me what would happen. I could feel anger boiling inside me. Don't start, Dimitri, Will sighed. Ellie is right and you know it. Maddie turned her head and placed a soft kiss on my chest. I relaxed immediately. But then I figured out what she did and I growled. Maddie! I exclaimed as I cupped her cheeks and made her look at me. You have to stop doing that. She sighed and closed her eyes. I am so sorry, she mumbled as she opened her eyes again. I am just used to it. I shook my head and placed a soft kiss on her lips. My princess, I said softly. You need to stop. You are hurting yourself. Maddie nodded and buried her face into my neck. She took a deep, slow breath and I could feel her relaxing. I placed my hand on the back of her head and held her close to me. Maybe Oliver's idea isn't a bad one, Will mumbled and I looked at him. She is obviously having trouble controlling it. I growled and narrowed my eyes at him. I need to be able to mind link her, Will, I said. I need Sky to be able to talk to her. What if I wasn't with her and something happened? What if Sky wouldn't be able to let Skol know what was going on with her? My princess had a bad habit of not telling me everything I needed to know. She had a bad habit of thinking that she was protecting me by hiding things from me. That was another thing I needed to talk to her about. She had to stop doing it. She had to be completely honest with me. But until she learned how to do that, Sky was my way of making sure that my princess was okay. But Will was right. She was having trouble and it was only hurting her. She is never alone, Dimitri, Will said. One of us is always with her. You would always be able to reach her and you would always know where she is. I tightened my hold on her. I wasn't sure. I still wasn't sure. Oliver said that the side effects were only a possibility, Ellie said. Maybe she won't have them. She could try to take it and see. The effect of the plant should wear off after a while. She will probably have the side effects, Ali said quietly, making Will, Ellie, and me look at her. Maddie lifted her head and looked at her as well. Allie looked at me and I could tell that she was very nervous. I tried to soften my gaze. I knew I didn't make the best first impression on her and I didn't want her to think that I didn't like her. She was important to both Maddie and Will and that made her important to me too. How do you know that, baby? Will asked as he ran his fingers through her hair. She looked at him and took a deep breath. Because I believe that I know what plant Oliver was talking about, she said. It's wolfsbane and it would surely block her mind link and her connection with her wolf. My eyes widened and a feral growl escaped me. Wolfsbane! I screamed. He wants to give her wolfsbane. I wanted to get up and go find him, but Maddie stopped me. Not in the amount that would harm me in any way, Dimitri, Maddie said calmly. He is going to use small amounts and mix it with other plants. I furrowed my brows and shook my head. How do you know that, Maddie? I asked. Because he used it to help my mom, she said calmly. Healers use wolfsbane in a lot of their potions. It is not dangerous in small amounts. She is right, Allie added and I looked back at her. Oliver will probably make a tea with a mixture of different herbs, one of which will be wolfsbane. I clenched my fists and gulped. But you are sure she will have those side effects? I asked and Allie gave me a small nod. I am sure that Oliver didn't say anything because he didn't want to scare you, she said. But even a small amount of wolfsbane would cause her to lose the ability to mind link and talk to her wolf. I tightened my jaw and forced myself to remain calm. I couldn't let the fear and the anger overwhelm me. I couldn't give Maddie a reason to use her powers. I was sure that she would do it if she felt me get angry or afraid. Are you sure that he would use wolfsbane? Ellie asked. Maybe he was talking about another plant. Allie furrowed her brows and bit her lower lip. Maybe, she said. But I doubt it. I took a deep breath and released it slowly. You don't have to decide right now, Dimitri, Will said. Maddie needs rest anyway. Sleep on it and we can talk about it again tomorrow. It's a tough decision. Will was right. We didn't have to make that decision now. You are right, I said, giving him a small nod. We will talk about it tomorrow. Do you need me to go back to the office with you? Will shook his head and relief washed over me. I didn't want to leave Maddie. Everything is ready for tomorrow, Will said. I will just go over some details one more time before going to bed. Mind link me if you need anything, I said and he gave me a small nod. He looked at Maddie and smiled. Get some rest, okay Mads, he said softly. I will see you tomorrow. Good night, Will, she said, smiling back at him. Allie and Ellie approached the bed and hugged Maddie. I will see you tomorrow, Maddie, Ellie said, smiling a little. Get some sleep. Maddie nodded and smiled at them. I watched them walk away. My lips were on Maddie's even before Will closed the door. How about I prepare you a warm bath? I asked as I lowered my lips to her neck. Only if you will be in that bath too, she said and I chuckled. Oh, that is surely going to happen, I said as I stopped kissing her neck. I can't wait to feel your body pressed against mine, princess. Maddie smiled and I kissed her lips again. I was going to show her how much I loved her. I was going to show her that I wouldn't leave her. I was going to show her that she was my entire world and that I wouldn't be able to live and breathe without her in my arms. Tell me. Madeline's POV. A small smile spread across my lips as soon as I woke up. I felt Dimitri's lips on my neck and my entire body tingled. My back was pressed to his chest. I shivered in delight and reached behind me, wrapping my arm around his waist and pulling him closer to me. Like I could ever give this up, he mumbled against my neck. You are insane if you think I would ever be able to live without this. He ran his nose across my jaw and took a deep breath. Like I could live without your scent, he said softly. He started sucking my mark and I cried out in pleasure. Like I could live without the taste of your skin, he added and started kissing my neck again. My whole body felt like it was on fire. I pressed myself closer to him and moaned when I felt how hard he was. Like I could breathe without waking up next to you, he whispered in my ear, and I turned my head so I could look at him. The love and desire I saw in his eyes made me feel like a complete fool for ever thinking that this man would leave me. He loved me just as much as I loved him. He wanted me just as much as I wanted him. I felt his hand caress my body gently. He never looked away from me. Like I could live without feeling your skin under my fingertips, he said quietly, and I felt tears burning the corners of my eyes. Like I could live without making love to you, he added softly and leaned in to kiss me. I thought that I would burst into flames. Everything was Dmitry. The air around me was him. Every feeling inside me was him. Every sensation on my body was him. Everything I ever was and everything I would ever be completely consumed by him. You are mine, he mumbled against my lips as he started pushing into me gently. I moaned and started moving my hips in circles. Tell me that you are mine, he said quietly. I am yours, I said immediately. I am only yours. His movements quickened a bit and I felt that familiar tingle of my orgasm in my lower belly. A shaky breath escaped me as I arched my back and pressed me into him. Tell me that you will never leave me, he said, his voice demanding. I will never leave you, I said, panting hard. His movements quickened again. Tell me that you will never even think about me leaving you, he said, growling quietly. I wanted to say it, but I couldn't. I couldn't do anything except moan in pleasure. Say it, Madeline, he growled as he started. Oh, I cried out, arching my back again. He started mark on my neck and my eyes rolled to the back of my head. Say it or I will stop, he threatened, and I whimpered. I won't think about it. I practically screamed. Oh, please. Good girl, he growled and licked my mark. Princess, he mumbled as he wrapped his arm around my waist. I love you, he said softly. I am sorry for yesterday. He placed a soft kiss on my shoulder, and I turned around to look at him. I am sorry for not mind linking you when he approached me, I said. I didn't think he was a threat. Dmitry shook his head and took a deep breath. He wasn't a threat, princess, he said softly. You were safe. I overreacted because I was already so angry at Kendrick. I furrowed my brows. Kendrick. Dmitry placed another kiss on my shoulder and sighed. He came while you were practicing with Ellie, he said, his voice laced with anger. He insisted on talking with me about Janet. I sighed and turned around so I could face him. He pulled me closer, and I wrapped myself around him. He chuckled as he placed a kiss on my forehead. Does he want you to let her go? I asked and he shook his head immediately. I told you that will never happen, he said as he stroked my hair. He wants to continue our conversation about her punishment. Dmitry scoffed and rolled his eyes. Like I would ever change my mind about that, he added, his voice laced with annoyance. I sighed and ran my fingers up and down his chest. I am sorry I wasn't there, I said and he shook his head immediately. I am not, he said. You would try to contain my anger again and you would end up hurting yourself. I sighed and he raised an eyebrow at me. Or am I wrong? He asked and I shrugged. Probably not, I mumbled and he pulled me into a hug. My silly princess, he said softly as he placed a kiss on my temple. I chuckled and tightened my arms around him. How is your head today? He asked. Much better, I said. I think that morning helped. Noted, Dmitri said, laughing a little. We should have X every morning and see if it helps with anything else. I snorted and placed a kiss on his neck. Deal, I said, looking at his handsome face. Maddie? Ellie mind-linked me. Are you feeling better? Will you be able to go to breakfast? Yes. I responded as I hugged Dmitri again. I will be ready in an hour. Okay. She said. I will come and get you. I cut our mind link and focused on my mate. How about we shower together? I asked him. Only if you let me you in there again, he said and I almost moaned. Yes, please, I said softly and Dmitri growled. I had to hold back my laugh when he jumped off the bed and picked me up. He threw me over his shoulder. Hey, I complained. Are you ready for me? He asked. Yes, I cried out. Please. I didn't have to ask him twice. Before I even realized what was happening, I grabbed his shoulders and dug my nails into his skin. I wish we could stay like that forever. Breakfast. Madeline's POV. I have to admit that I am a little bit surprised to see you here, Ellie said as I walked into the kitchen. I furrowed my brows. Why? Luna, the cook said, bowing his head at me. Good morning, Daniel, I said, giving him a small smile. I thought that Dmitri wouldn't let you go, Ellie said, making me look back at her. Oh, he is still complaining upstairs, I said, shaking my head and chuckling a little. But I managed to convince him that I had to do this. How is your head? Allie asked as she approached me and pulled me into a hug. A bit better, I said, hugging her back. I don't know what happened yesterday. You got upset, Maddie, Ellie sighed. It was a little bit too much for you to handle. I sighed and Allie let me go. Is everything ready, Daniel? I asked, looking back at him. He was cutting strawberries and decorating the plates. He looked up at me and nodded. Yes, Luna, he said, smiling at me. The girls are setting everything up as we speak. I gave him a small nod and smiled. Thank you so much, Daniel. There is no need to thank me, Luna, he said, bowing his head again. It's my pleasure to cook for you and your guests. He smiled and went back to decorating the plates. I looked at Ellie. Are all four Lunas coming? I asked as I approached the table and sat down. Ellie nodded. Do you know all of their names? Should we go through the list again? I raised an eyebrow at her. Do you think that my memory is that bad? Of course, I know their names. I know everything about them. Luna Maria was my former Alpha's mate. I was happy she came because I always admired her and I missed her insights and her presence in my life. She and my mom were best friends and Luna Maria was a constant presence in my life ever since I was a baby. I was hoping I would get to spend some alone time with her while she was here. Luna Laura was Alpha Xavier's mate. She was very quiet, but she seemed very kind. I was looking forward to getting to know her better. Luna Alice was Alpha Lincoln's mate and she was the loudest and the most talkative of all the Lunas. She always had a smile on her face and I admired her confidence. I believed that I had a lot to learn from her. Luna Jennifer was Alpha Lucius' mate and she was the only one that made me feel a bit uncomfortable. She was very quiet, but she never looked away from me when we were in the same room together. I was curious about her, but I always held back from reading her mind. It just felt like a huge invasion of her privacy and I didn't want to do that. But maybe I could have a little peek during breakfast. Maybe she knew something about who was threatening Dmitri. I don't think that your memory is bad, but you had a few rough days, Ellie said, sighing quietly. I just wanted to make sure you know everything. You need to know before we go in there. I smiled and nodded. I know everything, Ellie, I said. Don't worry. She glanced at Daniel before looking back at me. Don't read their minds. She mind-linked me. Dmitri forbade it. He doesn't want you hurting yourself. But maybe I could find something. I said, but she interrupted me. It's not worth it, Maddie. She said, shaking her head a little. Dmitri will find another way. Something will come up. It has to. I took a deep breath and released it slowly. Promise me that you will keep that wall up. She said. I bit the inside of my cheek. I had to at least try to find something useful. I had to help my mate. Madeline, Sky spoke, but I pushed her back immediately. I promise. I mind-linked Ellie. She gave me a small nod and looked at Ellie. Stay by her side at all times, Ellie said sternly. Dmitri will kill us if something happens to her. I sighed and shook my head. That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? I asked. You are scaring Ellie. Ellie raised her brows at me. Am I lying? Dmitri would lose his shit if I bring you back to him and a hair is missing from your head. I don't even want to think about what he would do if you got hurt. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop myself from smiling. Ellie really knew how to overreact sometimes. Come on, Ellie said, chuckling. I think that the Lunas have arrived. I stood up and started walking toward the dining room. Ellie was on my left and Ellie was on my right. I smiled even before I opened the door. Luna. Queen. They exclaimed as they bowed their heads at me. Good morning, I said as I sat down at the head of the table. I would like to apologize for my absence yesterday. I wasn't feeling well. Ellie sat on my left and Ellie sat on my right. I noticed Ellie watching the Lunas carefully. Don't worry about it, my queen, Luna Alice said, smiling brightly. I hope you are feeling better today. I smiled back and nodded. I am much better, thank you Luna, I said politely and looked at Maria. She reached out and took my hand in hers. I am so incredibly happy for you, Maddie, she said softly. You are an amazing Luna and I am so proud of you. I smiled brightly. Thank you, Maria, I said. That means so much coming from you. She squeezed my hand tightly before letting it go. I looked at Luna Laura and Luna Jennifer. I am so happy to have you here, I said, smiling at them. I hope you are enjoying your stay. Luna Laura smiled at me. Very much so, my queen. Everyone is excited about the first tournament tonight. I don't know whose idea it was to arrange a tournament and make it a tradition alongside Alpha's meeting, but it was the best idea ever, Luna Alice said as she poured coffee into her mug. Can you imagine not having some entertainment while we were here? I chuckled and nodded. I agree. I am very excited for the tournament to start. Luna Alice smiled at me and took a small sip of her coffee. I looked at Luna Jennifer and I focused on her thoughts. What is it about her? Why does Lucius want her so badly? Am I not as pretty as she is? Am I not enough for him? My breath got caught in my throat and I had to do everything in my power to remain calm. I lifted the wall around my brain again. I imagined it as tall and thick. I didn't want to hear anything else. I couldn't. Was it Lucius? He wanted me? Why? What did he want to do with me? I gulped and forced a small smile on my face. It's very nice to have you here, Luna, I said, trying to keep the confusion out of my voice. She remained quiet, but she bowed her head at me. Cade wanted me to say hi, Luna Maria said, drawing my attention back to her. He was supposed to come with Jack and me, but he got held back at the pack. He will be taking over the pack very soon. Cade was Jack and Maria's son. He was a couple of years older than me and I never really spent any time with him. That is so nice to hear, I said, smiling a little. I wish him all the best. Luna Maria smiled brightly and I looked back at Jennifer. I took a deep breath and focused on her thoughts again. I couldn't let her thoughts scare me. I was a Luna and a queen. I had to know if her mate was a threat to Dmitri and his throne. Money or power? Dmitri's POV. I am telling you, Dmitri, Will said. It has to be Lincoln. He has nothing to lose. I fixed my tie and glanced at him. His pack is falling apart, Will said, looking at the file in his hand. He is financially ruined. It makes sense that he would want to go after your throne, Dmitri. He is the one who would gain the most out of it. I sighed and shook my head. It's not Lincoln, I said, shaking my head. It's someone else. My money was on Lucius. I didn't give a FK what Alistair had said about him. I didn't trust him. You don't want it to be Lincoln because he was your father's friend, Will sighed, placing the file on my desk. That's not the only reason, Will, I said as I started fixing the cufflinks on my sleeves. Lincoln is harmless. He doesn't have the resources to do something like this. Will sighed and shook his head at me. Who is it then? He asked. We went through everything we have about these alphas and their packs. Nothing stands out. Lincoln is the only one with a motive. A financial one, yes, I said. That doesn't make him the traitor, Will. I took a deep breath and released it slowly. Besides, I don't really think that the motive behind this is money, I said. I believe it is about something else. Power. Will asked and I nodded. And Madeline, I said quietly, feeling the anger burning a hole in my stomach. Will's eyes widened. You really think that this is about her? He asked quietly. Why? She could only be a means to an end, though. They could only try to hurt her to get you to give up your throne. I gulped and gave him a small nod. Yes, I said, trying to stop my voice from trembling. But I am scared that it's not only about that. I think that they know who she is. Will's eyes widened even more. No, he exclaimed, shaking his head. They don't know, Dmitri. No one knows. I took a deep, slow breath through my nose. I needed to remain calm, but all I really wanted to do was scream and kill every single one of them. I am not so sure, I said, breathing out slowly. Why do you think I don't want her using her powers? Why do you think I don't want her to practice? Why do you think I am even considering letting Oliver give her that concoction that would just stop her powers? I tightened my jaw and shook my head. I am terrified that they already know, I said quietly. And I don't want to give them proof. I gritted my teeth and took a deep breath. I know it would be easier to just let Maddie read their minds and tell me which one of those is after my throne, I said angrily. But I would be putting her in so much danger if I did that. I would give them proof. I would show them who she is and what she can do. Every single one of them would be after her if I did that. Every single one of those would want my mate if I did that. Will nodded. I know, Dmitri. I agree with you. We can't use her for that. She isn't even aware of everything that she can do. Even if we tried, it could go horribly wrong. I nodded and Will furrowed his brows. But you didn't answer my question, he said. Why do you think that they know? I took another deep breath and ran my fingers through my hair. I am not sure, I said, tightening my jaw. Maybe it's my fear talking, but I have this terrible feeling that, I stopped talking and closed my eyes. Nothing will happen to her, Dmitri, Will said, placing a hand on my shoulder. She is safe. We won't let them hurt her. I opened my eyes and nodded. They, Will spoke, but he was interrupted when the door opened. My beautiful princess walked inside and my heart skipped a beat. She was wearing a beautiful dark green dress that enhanced the color of her eyes perfectly. Her hair was pulled up into a ponytail and I could see my mark on her neck. It made me shiver. It was a clear sign that this perfect woman was mine. Princess, I mumbled as I reached out for her. Are you ready? She asked as she approached me. She looked me up and down and smiled a little. I pulled her to me and breathed in her scent. It calmed me down immediately. You are really handsome, she said softly as she ran her hand down my back. I like this suit. I smiled and placed a kiss on her forehead. I missed her terribly. She spent the morning at breakfast with the Lunas. I was in meetings all day. I just wanted to be alone with her and keep her body close to mine. How did the meeting go? She asked, looking from me to Will. Did you find something new? Did the rogues attack again? Thankfully no, Will said. The meetings went well. We managed to come up with a new plan for border security. The Alphas agreed to most of it. Maddie nodded and looked at me. What about the traitor? She asked. Any new information? I tightened my jaw and shook my head. No, Princess. We couldn't bring it up at the meeting. If Alistair is right and it is one of the Alphas, I don't want him to know that we know. The Alphas suggested the possibility of rogues having their own leader, Will said, shaking his head. Some sort of an alpha of the rogues. Maddie furrowed her brows and looked at Will. Do you think it's possible? She asked. Will shrugged. It could be, but it's not likely. We would know if a rogue became that powerful. We would know if he managed to gather a large number of followers. Something like that couldn't be kept a secret for long. Maddie nodded and took a deep breath. At least we can make an educated guess about who their inside man is, Will added, rolling his eyes. Kendrick? Maddie mumbled. Do we have eyes and ears on him? I asked, tightening my hold on Maddie. Will nodded and smirked a little. Since the day Maddie read his mind, he said. I can tell you how many times he went to the bathroom last night. I shook my head and rolled my eyes. Maddie chuckled a little. That doesn't seem like relevant information, I said. Just letting you know it's information we do have, Will said, grinning at me. What about other information? Maddie asked, smiling a little. Anything relevant? Will shook his head. No. He stays in his office most days. He did try to visit Janet a couple of times, but he was never let inside. I growled quietly, making Maddie rub my back gently. Will glanced at the watch on his wrist and muttered a curse under his breath. We are going to be late, he said as he started walking toward the door. I am going to go get Allie. We have to leave. He rushed out of my office and I immediately pulled Maddie to me. I pressed my lips against hers and cupped her cheeks. Stay beside me the entire time, I said softly. Am I clear? Yes, she mumbled and kissed me. I melted into her embrace, wishing we could just stay here where she was safe. I couldn't wait for the night to be over. I couldn't wait until I was asleep next to her. I couldn't wait until she was safely wrapped in my arms. The first challenge. Dimitri's POV. Loud cheering and clapping made me look back at the battlefield. The last fight of the night was almost over. Alpha Theodore's warrior was winning. I couldn't care less about the tournament. I kept looking around, trying to see if anyone was acting suspicious. Kendrick, Landon, and Ryan were sitting close to us. Kendrick kept glancing at Maddie and the urge to gauge his eyes out only grew inside me. I couldn't wait to find evidence about him working with the traitors. I couldn't wait to have a reason to kill him. He is really good, Maddie said quietly. A wave of jealousy washed over me and Maddie chuckled. Are you seriously jealous? She mind-linked me. As if I would ever want or need anyone else but you. I glanced at her and saw her shaking her head at me. I wasn't jealous until you mentioned how good he was. I mumbled through the mind link. Looking back, letting her watch men fight wasn't one of my best choices. She took my hand in hers and squeezed it. He isn't you. She said softly. All I want and all I need is you. I lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles softly. I know, princess. I said and looked at her. My heart skipped a beat. I was sometimes stunned by the amount of love I felt for her. I still couldn't believe that the goddess gave her to me. I sometimes still couldn't believe that I was lucky enough to stand beside her and call her mine. We have a winner! Landon exclaimed, making me look back at the battlefield. Alpha Theodore's warrior won. Maddie and I stood up and started applauding him. People around us cheered and clapped. Alpha Theodore approached his warrior and patted his back. I could see how proud he was. Some of my warriors rushed to help Alpha Ezekiel's warrior who was lying on the ground and whining quietly. Congratulations! Landon exclaimed, shaking the winner's hand. It was a well-deserved victory. Landon was smiling brightly and it annoyed me. I wanted to wipe that stupid smile off his face. Thank you, Chancellor, Alpha Theodore's warrior said, smiling a little. He looked at Maddie and me and bowed. My king and my queen, he said, lifting his head. Thank you for giving me a chance to participate in the tournament. You are welcome, I said, smiling politely. Congratulations on your victory. My queen and I are looking forward to seeing you participate in the next challenge. The warrior smiled and bowed again. Alpha Theodore wrapped an arm around his shoulder and led him away. He never stopped smiling. Maddie and I stood up and turned around. All of our guests were seated behind us. Thank you for coming, I said, smiling politely. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. Food and drinks will be served in the throne room. I am looking forward to seeing you there. I took Maddie's hand in mine and started walking away before anyone could try to stop us. I didn't want anyone approaching her. I didn't want anyone close to her. I was wondering if I would be able to convince her to go to our room and wait for me there. She did her part and she really didn't need to stay for the party. Maddie, princess, I was wondering if you would be okay with going back to our room and waiting for me there. I asked as I pulled her closer and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She looked up at me and furrowed her brows. Why? She asked. We still have a party to go to. I glanced at Will who was walking behind us. He raised an eyebrow at me. I want you to rest, princess, I said softly. I am worried this might be too much. Maddie shook her head. I am fine. I can go. I tightened my jaw and kissed her temple. Please, Princess, I said quietly. Ali and I can keep you company until Dmitri returns, Ellie said, making me look at her. She and Ali were walking next to Will. She gave me a knowing look and smiled at Maddie. But I am the queen, Maddie said, looking at me. I should be there. You should be resting, Mads, Will said softly. Yes, I nodded. You already went to that breakfast this morning. I am worried that all of this is too much. You had that fever yesterday. I kissed her forehead and rubbed her back gently. Please, princess, I said, and she gave me a small nod. Okay, she said. But I am only sitting this one out. I will be going to every event after this one. I smiled and nodded. Of course, my princess. My king, I heard Landon's voice behind us and I had to stop myself from growling. What did he want? I stopped walking and turned around. I pulled Maddie closer to me and tightened my hold on her. Landon, I said, trying to remain calm. What can I help you with? Is there a problem with the tournament? Landon shook his head. No, my king. Everything is going perfectly. He looked at Maddie and smiled. You look amazing tonight, my queen, he said, bowing his head to her. I gritted my teeth and tried to stop myself from standing in front of her and shielding her with my body. I didn't want his eyes on her. Thank you, Landon, she said politely. Can I help you with something, Landon? I asked, wanting to change the subject. We should really get going. We are expected at the party. I know, my king, Landon said. I just wanted to stop you to ask about a meeting regarding the punishment of our former Luna. The council is worried, my king. I couldn't stop the quiet growl that escaped me. We will have the meeting after the meeting is done, Landon, I said, trying to get a hold of my anger. I already told you that. He nodded. You did, my king. But the alphas are talking amongst themselves. They noticed her absence, my king. We are worried about appearances and we have a proposal for you. I couldn't give a shit about appearances. I don't care about that, I said, tightening my jaw. I am more than happy to tell the alphas what happened. Landon's eyes widened. No, my king, he exclaimed, shaking his head. You have to think about the consequences of that action. I strongly advise you to keep it a secret. I forced myself to take a deep breath. This is not the time or place to talk about this, Landon, I said sternly. We will discuss this at a more appropriate time. We were in the middle of the forest and I could hear the rest of our guests approaching us. Landon sighed and glanced behind his shoulder. Yes, my king, he said, but I could hear the disappointment in his voice. Can we meet tomorrow morning? I really didn't want to. I didn't care about their proposal. I couldn't even answer him. Of course, Landon, Maddie said politely. Please excuse us. We really have to go. She took my hand in hers and we started walking away. Good job, Mads, Will whispered. You shouldn't have agreed, I mumbled. I don't want to talk about their proposal. I know, Maddie sighed. But he wasn't going to give up, Dmitri. I knew that. I took another deep breath and pulled Maddie to me. Thank you, princess, I said, placing a soft kiss on her temple. It's my job to support you, she said, smiling at me. I will always be here to do that. I leaned in and placed a soft kiss on her lips. She was right. She would always be here to support me. She would always be right by my side. No one could take her away from me. Suspicious. Dimitri's POV. My king, I heard Alpha Ezekiel's voice behind me. I turned around and smiled. Alpha Ezekiel, I said politely. Are you enjoying the party? He nodded and took a small sip of his drink. Very much so, my king, he said, smiling at me. Everything is just amazing. The food is great. Please give my thanks to your cook. I nodded, keeping a small smile on my face. Thank you, Alpha, I said. Daniel will be thrilled to know that you liked his food. Alpha Ezekiel smiled again and looked around the room. Where is our lovely queen? He asked, looking back at me. I was hoping she would grace us with her presence tonight. I narrowed my eyes slightly but forced myself to keep smiling. Why did he want her here? Was he the traitor? Did he want to hurt my mate? Oh, I was going to rip him to pieces. Our queen isn't feeling well, Will answered instead of me. She is resting, but she will attend the second challenge tomorrow. Alpha Ezekiel looked at Will and his eyes widened a little. Is she okay? He asked. Is she sick? His voice sounded like he was genuinely concerned, but his interest in her pissed me off. Why was he concerned? Why did he care? Was it just because she was his queen and the worry came from the loyalty he felt, or was there more to it? Did he want her? Did he know who she was? Was he planning to take her? Calm down, Dimitri. Will mind-linked me and interrupted my thoughts. I gulped and forced myself to take a deep, slow breath. She is more than okay, Alpha, Will said, smiling at him. She just needed some time to rest. Alpha Ezekiel nodded and looked back at me. I forced myself to smile. Please take good care of her, my king, he said, bowing his head at me. She is important to us all. I tightened my jaw and pushed myself to keep smiling. I was sure it looked more like I was baring my teeth at him, but there was nothing else I could have done. I wanted to grab him by his neck and ask him what he knew about the traitor. I wanted to rip him to pieces. I wanted to kill every single one of them only to make sure that she was safe. I wanted them all gone. But I couldn't do any of that. I had to remain calm and collected. Of course, Alpha, I said, hoping my voice sounded as calm as I intended it to be. She is in very good hands. She is safe. That is very good to know, my king, he said, giving me another small smile. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go find my beta before he talks someone's ear off. Alpha Ezekiel bowed again before he turned around and walked away. I drank my whiskey in one sip. You need to calm down a little, Dimitri, Will said quietly. They will figure out that something is going on if you continue like this. I felt a wave of anger wash over me. Will was right, but his words still pissed me off. I know, I mumbled, looking around the room. It's just so hard, Will. I want to kill them all just to make sure that she is safe. Will sighed and gave me a small nod. I understand, Dimitri, Will said quietly. I would want to do it too if this was about Ali. But that won't help. We need to remain calm and focus on finding the man who is really guilty. I took a deep breath and gulped. Keep your eyes open, I said, narrowing my eyes at Alpha Lucius. Let me know if you notice anyone acting suspicious. Will nodded and looked around. Kendrick is talking to Alpha Theodore, he said. I grabbed the whiskey bottle and poured myself another glass. I know, I said, glancing at them. They've been talking for a while. Will narrowed his eyes slightly and shook his head. Everything they do looks suspicious, he mumbled, taking a small sip of his drink. I can't even believe that one of them is bold enough to go against you. They are hungry for power, Will, I said, tightening my jaw. All of them would give everything they have to be in my position. All of them want the power that I have. But none of them knew that I couldn't give a crap about my power. None of them knew that I only cared about my throne because it was my father's legacy. None of them knew that my mate was the only thing in this world I truly cared about. But why now, Dmitri? Will asked, furrowing his brows. They could have attacked when you were taking over the kingdom. You were more vulnerable then than you are now. What changed? My stomach twisted. The only logical answer to that question was that I had found my mate. Maddie, I said, gulping down my whiskey again. I am more vulnerable now, Will. I have everything to lose now. They know that. I loved my kingdom and my pack. I loved being a king, helping my people, and guiding them. My father had been preparing me for this role ever since I was a child. I was born to be a king and I hoped each and every day that my father was proud of me. But I would choose Maddie over my throne and I was sure that my father would do the same if he was put in a position where he had to choose. He was the one who taught me that mates always come first. He loved my mother more than anything else in this world. I wondered if she loved him just as much as he loved her. Will shook his head and tightened his jaw. He muttered, taking another sip of his drink. I gulped and focused my attention on Alpha Theodore and Kendrick. I couldn't hear what they were talking about. The room was packed with guests and members of my pack. Everyone was talking, smiling, and having a good time. I am going to Mark Alley tonight, Will said, making me look at him. I raised an eyebrow and smiled. Congratulations, I said, raising my glass at him. Will her parents come here to get to know you? Will shook his head. We talked about it. I will go to her pack when things cool down a bit here. I nodded and looked back at Alpha Theodore. Kendrick wasn't with him anymore. I am really happy for you, Will, I said, trying to find Kendrick in the crowd. Allie is a great girl. She is, Will said softly. I am so in love with her. I can't wait to mark her. I can't wait to make her mine. I smiled and glanced at him. I remembered that feeling all too well. Will was lucky. I had to wait 9 months until I could finally sink my canines into my mate's neck. Take tomorrow off, I told him. Spend the day with your mate. I will see you tomorrow night at the second challenge. Are you sure? Will asked and I nodded. I am completely sure, Will, I said. You will want to stay in bed with her. I looked at him and smirked a little. Trust me, I added, making him chuckle. Well, you don't have to tell me twice, he said, grinning at me. I shook my head and looked back at the crowd. My eyes fell on Alpha Lucius and Kendrick. They were talking to each other and they both looked very concerned about something. I tightened my jaw and forced myself to hold back a growl that tried to escape me. I wished I could hear them talking. I wished they would say something that would justify me killing them on the spot. Making her mine. William's POV. I knocked on the door gently as I opened it and walked inside Dimitri's office. Ellie and Allie were sitting on the couch. Maddie was pacing around the room. My eyes fell on my beautiful mate and I couldn't help but smile. Hi, beautiful, I said as I reached out for her. She blushed a little and smiled. She stood up and walked into my arms. I could feel my heart skipping a beat. I buried my nose into her hair and took a deep breath. I missed her so much. It didn't matter if I was away from her for only a minute. I missed her regardless of the time I spent away from her. Where is Dmitri? Maddie asked, making me look at her. He is still at the party, I said, giving her a small smile. He will be here soon. Maddie nodded and continued pacing around. Is everything okay? I asked worriedly. She looked worried and uneasy. Everything is fine, Ellie said, giving me a small smile. Maddie is just nervous without Dimitri. I narrowed my eyes slightly. I wasn't convinced, but then Ellie placed a kiss on my collarbone and I completely forgot about everything else. I looked down at her and smiled. She would become forever mine tonight. Are you ready to leave? I asked and she nodded. I looked back up at Maddie and my sister. Good night, I said as I took Ollie's hand in mine. I will see you tomorrow. My sister smiled and waved at me. Good night, Maddie mumbled, but she didn't even look at us. I furrowed my brows again. What was that about? Is everything really okay? I mind-linked my sister. She rolled her eyes and nodded. Yes. She said. Maddie is fine. Go mark your mate. She smirked at me and I frowned. How did she know? Maybe Ellie told her. Well, no. That didn't make any sense. Ellie was a bit shy. I seriously doubted that she would tell Ellie about our plans tonight. Maybe. Will, my mate called me softly, interrupting my thoughts. I looked at her and she raised her brows slightly. Are we leaving? She asked and I nodded. Yes, beautiful, I said, giving her a small smile. I am sorry. I got lost in thought. I tightened my hold on her hand and started walking out of the office. My heart started racing as soon as we stepped out into the hallway. I pulled her to me immediately and I placed a kiss on her temple. Are you sure about this, my love? I asked, running my hand down her back. We don't have to do it if you are not ready. She wrapped an arm around my waist and looked up at me. I am ready, she said softly. I want you, Will. I need you. My stomach did a weird flip and I growled quietly. She would have all of me. She already did have all of me. We would just confirm it tonight. Beautiful, I mumbled as I leaned in and kissed her. You already have me. Kissing and walking at the same time was a bit weird. Thankfully, our room wasn't far and we were entering it just a few moments later. I lowered my lips to her jaw as I closed and locked the door behind us. She grabbed the back of my suit jacket and pressed herself closer to me. You look amazing in this suit, she mumbled quietly. I couldn't keep my eyes off you the entire night. I smiled and looked up at her. I noticed, I said as I caressed her cheek with my thumb. I saw you drooling a little. She frowned and shook her head. I wasn't drooling, she said, making me laugh. I leaned in and captured her lips with mine. She maybe wasn't, but I surely was. The dress she was wearing kept me so hard the entire night. I had to keep readjusting myself so people wouldn't notice. I turned her around and pressed her against the door. I lowered my lips to her neck and started sucking on her marking spot. Will, she moaned my name and I almost exploded. Beautiful, I mumbled as I licked her neck. You are driving me crazy. She cried out in pleasure and I could already smell her arousal. It made my heart skip a beat. I couldn't wait to be inside her. I couldn't wait. Until my canines pierced her soft skin. Can I take the dress off? I asked as I reached behind her and found the zipper. Yes, she mumbled. Please. I gulped as I started pulling the zipper down. The sleeve of her dress fell from her shoulder, and I saw she is perfect. Oh, I cried out as I leaned in and placed a soft kiss. I looked up at her. Her eyes widened and she squirmed a little. Does that feel good? I asked and she gulped. Yes, please, she mumbled. She gasped a little when I started gently. Oh, Will, she mumbled, pressing herself closer to me. Don't stop, please. I will never stop, beautiful, I mumbled as I pulled her dress completely off. I can stop, beautiful, I said quietly. Just say the words. Nothing has to happen tonight. I am yours and you are mine even without the mark. Ali shook her head. She placed her hand over mine and pushed it down gently. Touch me, she said softly. Please. I was going to pass out. I kept my eyes on hers, watching the wish and love sparkle in them. It made my heart expand. It made my love for her grow. I lifted her leg and placed it over my shoulder. She gasped a little as she pressed herself closer to the wall to stop herself from losing balance. I got you, my love, I told her, keeping my eyes on hers still. I won't let you fall. She smiled and ran her fingers through my hair. I love you, Will, she said softly, and I felt a wave of emotions rush over me. It was the first time she said it. Oh, I love you too, my beautiful Ali, I whispered as I finally looked down at her. It was perfect. It was ready for me. It was mine and only mine. I groaned as I leaned close and placed a soft kiss on her. Are you okay, my love? I asked, looking up at her. There was a mixture of nervousness and desire on her face. Yes, she whispered. Don't stop, please. I smiled a little as I looked back down. Oh, she didn't have to worry about me stopping. I was so sure that I would get addicted to her to tasted them for the first time. I lifted my hand and used my fingers to spread her lips open. She squirmed a little and I groaned. But I definitely needed to taste her first. I looked up at her. She gasped and her eyes widened. My taste buds exploded, and I was instantly addicted to her. Just as I knew I would be. Madeline's POV. This is just getting ridiculous, I said, shaking my head. This is getting out of hand. He needs to let me help him. Ellie sighed, crossing her arms over her chest. He isn't going to do that, Maddie, she said. It's dangerous. I looked at her and resisted the urge to roll my eyes. How? I asked. It's not like they can tell when I read their minds. It's not like they can feel it. I could be reading your mind right now and you wouldn't know. Ellie sighed again. It's not about that, Madeline, she said, shaking her head. It's about what happens after. Dmitri doesn't want to risk it and we all agree with him. It's not worth it. He will find him without your powers. I furrowed my brows in confusion. What could happen after? I asked. They will want to know how we found out? As if Dmitri would want to explain that to them. They don't have to know how we found out. We can just, it's not about that, Maddie, Ellie interrupted me. It's about you. Dmitri doesn't want to risk you getting hurt. You saw what happened yesterday. You still don't know what you can do. You didn't even know you were using your powers to take away Dmitri's anger. You could expose yourself accidentally while trying to read their minds. You could get hurt doing it. It's not worth it, Maddie. I took a deep breath and released it slowly. I can practice here, I said. No one would find out. Ellie raised an eyebrow at me. What if you lose control over it? She asked. What if you can control the emotions of a large group of people? What if your powers got out of control and you did something that every single one of them would notice? I tightened my jaw and gulped. It's not worth it, Maddie, Ellie added, shaking her head at me. Dmitri will find another way to figure it all out. I forced myself to take a deep breath. What Ellie was saying made sense, but I was still convinced that they were too careful. I was sure that nothing bad would happen. I was sure that I would be able to figure it out and everything would end. What if the traitor isn't even here? Ellie asked, making me furrow my brows. Alpha Alistair said, I spoke, but she interrupted me again. He has no proof, Mads, Ellie sighed, shaking her head. That is just his opinion. I bit the inside of my cheek and gulped. I had to tell Ellie what I found out at breakfast. I think it's Alpha Lucius, I said quietly. Ellie furrowed her brows. She was silent for a moment. Why do you think that? She asked. I glanced toward the door. I couldn't let Dmitri know that I used my powers to read Luna Jennifer's thoughts. At least not yet. I read Luna Jennifer's mind and, I started speaking, but Ellie's loud growl interrupted me. You what? She exclaimed as she stood up. I told you not to do that, Madeline. I sighed and shook my head at her. Well, nothing bad happened, did it? I mumbled. I controlled it and now I know, you were lucky. Ellie exclaimed, interrupting me again. You could have lost control over it. You could have hurt yourself. Ellie started pacing around and shaking her head. Oh, Dmitri is going to kill me, she muttered. He didn't want you to go because he was afraid of you getting hurt. I didn't get hurt, Ellie, I said, making her look at me and narrow her eyes. Everything is fine. I am fine. She took a deep breath and released it slowly. Thank goddess for that, Ellie said quietly. But you risked so much, Maddie. I sighed and crossed my arms over my chest. Well, it's too late now, I said. I did it and I know something. Do you want me to tell you what I found out or not? Ellie tightened her jaw and closed her eyes. She took a deep breath and released it slowly. You are driving me insane, she mumbled as she opened her eyes. What did you find out? I glanced toward the door again and approached Ellie. Alpha Lucius thinks that Dmitri doesn't deserve me, I said, and I felt bile rising and burning the back of my throat. He thinks that Dmitri isn't good enough for me and that I deserve a better, stronger mate. He would also like to. I stopped talking to take another deep breath. I was disgusted by what I had to say next. Do things to me, I mumbled quietly. He believes he would be a better mate for me. Ellie's eyes widened. Oh, Dmitri is going to rip him to pieces, she mumbled, shaking her head a little. I nodded and took a deep breath. I just don't understand why he told that to Luna Jennifer, I said, furrowing my brows. She is his mate. Why would he admit something like that? Ellie sighed and sat back down on the couch. Alpha Lucius is known for his adventures outside of the mate bond, Ellie explained. His mate can feel it every time he cheats on her, so it's not like she doesn't know about it. I am surprised that he talks about something like that with her, though. Maybe she overheard him talking to someone else, I said, shrugging a little. Ellie nodded. That's more likely. She sighed and narrowed her eyes slightly. Did you hear anything else? She asked, and I shook my head. No, I said. But that is pretty huge, isn't it? If Alpha Lucius thinks that Dmitri doesn't deserve me, maybe he thinks that he doesn't deserve to be king either. Maybe, Ellie mumbled. We should tell Dmitri, I said, but Ellie shook her head. Not yet, she said. Let me look into him a bit more, okay? Dmitri will rip him apart if we tell him an Alpha Lucius could be just a horny old man who is jealous of Dmitri and thinks that you are pretty. I raised an eyebrow at her. Do you think that's possible? I asked. She nodded and sighed. He is a pervert, she mumbled, rolling her eyes. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just about X for him. He wouldn't be a good king anyway. He always ran from any kind of responsibility. I doubt that he is interested in that. Okay, I said, taking another deep breath. See if you can find something useful. Dmitri doesn't need to know about it if it's just about me. I don't want to stress him out even more. Ellie nodded. He wanted to say something else, but she was interrupted when the door opened and Dmitri walked inside. I smiled immediately. I missed him. Hi, princess, he said as he closed the door and approached me. Are you tired? He wrapped his arms around me and I sighed contently. A bit, I said, placing a kiss on his chest. Is the party over? Mostly, he said, placing a kiss on my temple. A few brave ones are still drinking and talking. I excused myself. I missed you too much to stay longer. I smiled at him and he caressed my cheek. Let's go to bed, princess, he said softly and I nodded. Dmitri looked up at Ellie and smiled. Good night, Ellie, he said as he took my hand in his. I will see you tomorrow. Good night, Ellie said quietly. Dmitri started leading me out. I looked at Ellie and she gave me a small nod. I will figure it out. She mind-linked me. Don't worry. I gave her a small smile just as Dmitri closed the office door. I focused on him and tried to forget about everything that was going on. He was more important than anything or anyone else. He smiled and leaned in to kiss me softly. I melted into his arms and my body relaxed immediately. SKOL knows. Dmitri's POV. SKOL's whining woke me up from my peaceful sleep. I groaned and tried to shut him out. No, Dmitri, he whined. Let me out. I tried to push him back, but he wouldn't budge. Let me out, he growled, trying to push me to shift. Let me out. What was wrong with him? I groaned and opened my eyes slowly. It was still dark outside. Maddie was sleeping peacefully next to me. What did SKOL want? What, SKOL? I mumbled, pulling Maddie closer to me. Let me sleep. No, Dmitri, he whined again. You need to let me out. I can feel him. Feel him? What was he talking about? Was someone here? Was someone on our floor? I opened my eyes abruptly and looked at the door. I tensed up and prepared myself to jump out of bed. I was going to kill whoever it was. I was going to rip them to pieces. Were they here to hurt Maddie? Were they here to? No, Dmitri, SKOL interrupted my thoughts. No one is here. I can feel our pup, Dmitri. My heart stopped beating. She is pregnant, SKOL said, his voice trembling with excitement. Our maid is pregnant. I turned to look at Maddie and I could feel the tears burning the corners of my eyes. Are you sure? I asked as I removed the blanket from her body. I looked at her lower belly and I shivered. Completely sure, SKOL said. I can feel him. Oh, goddess, I cried out as I lowered myself until I reached her lower belly. I placed a hand on it and I felt my heart explode with all the love that overwhelmed me. Hi, my beautiful little pup, I mumbled as I leaned in and placed a soft kiss below her belly button. It's your dad. I love you so much. Maddie stirred and sighed quietly. I felt a tear fall down my cheek. Maddie, princess. I called her as I caressed her lower belly with my thumb. She furrowed her brows a little and made herself more comfortable. I smiled and caressed her lower belly again. Maddie. I called her a bit louder. She sighed and frowned a little. She opened her eyes slowly and I could tell that she was confused when she didn't see me next to her. She looked down at me and furrowed her brows. What are you doing? She asked sleepily. Come back and hold me. I chuckled and gave her a small nod. In a minute, princess, I said. I need to tell you something first. She laid her head back down, closed her eyes, and sighed. It better be good, she mumbled. I am not happy that you woke me up. I had to bite my cheek to stop myself from laughing. Skol woke me up to tell me that he can feel our pup in here, I said softly as I placed another kiss below her belly button. She froze for a second. Her eyes snapped open and she lifted her head abruptly. She looked at me wide-eyed and I grinned. Is that good enough? I asked, trying so hard not to chuckle. She gasped and looked at my hand on her lower belly. Is he sure? She asked quietly. Am I really pregnant? He is sure, princess, I said, reaching up and caressing her cheek. We are going to have a little pup. I saw tears in her eyes and her emotions overwhelmed me completely. She was happy. She was excited. She already loved our pup more than anything else in this world. But she was also a little bit nervous and worried. There is nothing to be nervous about, my love, I said, resting my head on her belly. You two are my greatest treasure. Nothing will happen to you. I will always keep you safe. She ran her fingers through my hair and sniffled quietly. I looked up at her and saw her smiling softly. I know, she said, caressing my cheek. And we will always keep you safe. We both love you so much. You are going to be an amazing dad. Another tear fell on my cheek and Maddie wiped it away. And you are going to be an amazing mom, I said softly. Our pup will adore you. He is the luckiest pup in the world because you will be his. Mom. Maddie smiled and ran her fingers through my hair again. I want to see him, Skol whined. I want to smell him. There is nothing to see, Skol, I told him. She wasn't even showing yet and she wouldn't be for a while. She was probably pregnant for only a few days. Leakin wolves could feel their pups very early in the pregnancy. Skol felt him even before Sky did. Let me out, he whined, pushing me to shift again. Skol wants to feel the pup, I told Maddie. I need to let him out or he will drive me crazy. Maddie chuckled and gave me a small nod. It's okay, she said. Let him out. I placed another soft kiss on her belly before I reluctantly stood up and took a few steps away from the bed. Only a few minutes, Skol, I told him. I want to be with her. He didn't respond. He just took over before I could even blink. He whined and practically threw himself on the bed. Easy, I growled at him. Maddie chuckled and reached out for him. He gently pulled her to him, burying his snout into her neck. Hi, Skol, she said softly. I missed you. Oh, I love her so much, he told me and I smiled a little. He lowered his head until his snout reached her lower belly. He whined quietly and took a deep breath. I can smell him, he said excitedly. Our pup is in here. My heart skipped a beat and I felt it expand. I didn't even know that my heart could do that. Skol placed his giant paw on her stomach and I couldn't help but chuckle. She looked so tiny compared to him. Maddie ran her fingers through his fur and he purred. I love you, Skol, Maddie said softly as she leaned in and placed a kiss on his giant arm. He lifted his head and licked her cheek, making her chuckle. I love her too, he told me. I love her with my entire heart. She knows, I told him softly. Skol looked back down at her belly and purred again. He leaned in and licked it gently. My pup, he mumbled quietly. My beautiful, little pup. Maddie kept running her finger through his fur. She kept caressing his giant body. She kept pressing herself closer to him. She kept hugging him. Skol was in heaven and I wasn't sure if he would ever let me shift back. Probably not, he said, making me roll my eyes. He licked her belly again and rested his giant head on it. Maddie scratched him behind his ears and he shivered in delight. I chuckled and pushed for him to let me out. Just one more minute, he complained. No, I said sternly. I will let you out again tomorrow. He whined as he lifted his head and licked Maddie's cheek again. She placed a kiss on his snout and I was sure he was going to melt into a puddle. He somehow managed to get out of bed and I shifted back immediately. You will break him down if you keep spoiling him like that, I said teasingly as I got back into bed with my beautiful mate. She chuckled and wrapped her arms around me. I love him so much, she said. I can't help it. I cupped her cheek and took a deep breath. We are going to be mom and dad, I mumbled quietly. She smiled brightly and nodded. I love you, Dmitri, she said quietly. I leaned in and pressed my lips against hers. I love you too, my princess. Not funny. Dmitri's POV. If someone would describe me as an overprotective and an overpossessive mate, I would tell them that they hadn't seen anything yet. Now that I knew Maddie was pregnant, I would be damned if I let her out of my sight for even 1 second. Especially in a situation like this when everyone was here and where there was someone who wanted to take my throne. My mate and my pup were a sure way to do that. I would give up everything for them. Princess, I mumbled softly as I approached her and wrapped my arms around her from behind. I placed a hand on her lower belly and kissed her shoulder. I was holding my entire world in my arms and that feeling was so hard to describe. How are you feeling? I asked her. Are you nauseous? Are you uncomfortable? Maddie chuckled and shook her head. I am perfectly fine, she said, placing her hand over mine. I am only a few days pregnant. I think that the symptoms will come a bit later. I knew that, but I had to ask. I had to do something if she was in any kind of pain. I placed a kiss on her temple and rested my head against hers. There will be no breakfasts or lunches or dinners without me present, I told her as I gently caressed her lower belly. You won't be leaving my side from now on. Not even for 1 second. Am I clear? Really? Maddie asked, frowning a little. And I was just about to ask you if I could go on a 3-day hike outside of our borders. Alone, of course. My heart stopped beating even though I knew she was messing with me. Not funny, Madeline, I grumbled, making her chuckle. I thought it was funny, she said, stepping away from my embrace. She turned around and grinned at me. We should work on your humor, I said as I watched her tie her hair into a ponytail. You suck at it, princess. She laughed and shook her head. You are biased. We need a third party to determine that. I rolled my eyes at her and pressed another kiss on her temple. Hurry up, I said as I walked out of the bathroom to finish getting ready. Ellie is waiting for us in our office. We need to prepare everything for tonight. Tonight was the second challenge. I still had to choose an object or a person to be hunted during the challenge. I was so focused on finding the traitor that I almost forgot about it. Dmitri. Maddie called me and I turned around to look at her. She furrowed her brows and bit her lower lip. Should we tell them about the pup? She asked quietly. I took a deep breath and released it slowly. I wasn't sure what to tell her. Maybe it would be best to wait a bit, she said. Maybe a few weeks. That actually wasn't a terrible idea. The less people knew the better. I agree, Princess, I said, giving her a small smile. We should wait to tell them. She smiled back at me and I had to force myself to walk away. I wanted to take her back to our bed and just cuddle up next to her. I wanted to kiss her and caress her lower belly. I didn't want to do anything or go anywhere. I chuckled quietly and shook my head. Finding my mate really made me a horrible worker. I put on a sweater and jeans. We had no meeting today and I was a bit relieved. I spent the last few days in a suit and I was happy I could put on a little bit less formal outfit today. I am ready, Maddie said as she walked out of the bathroom. I turned around to look at her and saw her eyeing me up and down. I smirked a little. How do you manage to look so good in everything you put on? She asked as she approached me. You look amazing in a suit. You look amazing in jeans. You look amazing in sweats. You look just perfect wearing nothing. She sighed as she wrapped her arms around my waist and looked up at me. How is that possible? She mumbled, making me laugh. I smirked a little and caressed her cheek. I am your mate, I said. You are biased. We need a third party to determine if I look amazing in everything. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop myself from grinning. Or nothing, I added, making her gasp. No freaking way, she said, growling quietly. Only I get to see that. I laughed and leaned in to kiss her. Of course, my princess, I said, pressing her closer to me. I am all yours. No one else can see me. Only you. I caressed her cheek and kissed her softly. She sighed, tightening her arms around me. I like it when you are jealous, I mumbled against her lips. She chuckled and shook her head. Of course I'm jealous, she said, leaning in and placing a kiss on my chest. No one gets to have you. She rested her head on my chest and sighed. You are mine, she added quietly and my knees buckled. I am yours, my princess, I said softly, tangling my fingers into her hair and pressing her closer. Only yours. She looked up at me and smiled. I caressed her cheek and took her hand in mine. Come on, I said as I started walking toward the door. We need to go. We have a lot of work to do. Did you choose an object or a person for the pack hunt tonight? She asked as we walked out of our bedroom. Not yet, I said, closing the door. Maybe they could hunt me, she said, making me growl at her. I looked at her and saw her smirking at me. As I said, you are not funny, Madeline, I said, shaking my head at her. She chuckled and placed a kiss on my upper arm. I am hilarious, she said. Ask anyone. I shook my head and rolled my eyes. Imagining someone hunting her was not funny at all. It was terrifying. Like I would ever let something like that happen. Even if it was just pretend. There was no way. We reached our office and we walked inside. Ellie was sitting at Maddie's desk. She looked up from the file she was reading. What took you so long? She asked, closing the file and standing up. We have work to do. Sorry, Ellie, Maddie said as she let my hand go and approached her desk. What are those? She picked up one of the files from the desk and opened it. Financial statements from every pack, Ellie said. I was looking through them. I wanted to see if there were any unusual transactions lately. Did you find anything? She asked. Nothing, Ellie sighed. Alpha Lincoln is in some financial trouble, but other than that there is nothing. Mind if I go through them? She asked, looking at me. Of course not, Princess, I said, giving her a small smile. She smiled back at me and sat in her chair. My heart skipped a beat. I still couldn't believe that she was carrying my pup. Pack hunt, Ellie said, drawing my attention to her. I took a deep breath and nodded. I had to focus on the second challenge tonight. I couldn't wait for the meeting and the tournament to be over. It seemed like it lasted forever. I wanted everyone gone so I could focus on my mate and my pup. My pup. I was going to be a dad. I still couldn't believe it. He is useless. Unknown's POV, is everything ready? I asked as I put my hands in my pockets. I was looking through the window into the thick forest that surrounded my new home. It was just perfect. I couldn't wait to build my future here. All of my dreams would come true in this place. I would finally get everything I always wanted to have. I would finally become everything I was always supposed to be. Yes, Alpha, Brody said. Everything will be over tonight. I smiled and took a deep breath. I was so excited and I could barely think about anything else other than finally seeing her tonight. What about Kendrick, Alpha? Brody asked and my mood worsened instantly. I hated that man. He was nothing but a greedy, little rat who thought that he would get what he wanted by sucking up to me. He is a useless piece of thrash, I said, growling quietly. We don't need him. Brody was silent for a moment. Are you sure, Alpha? He asked. He has insight into, what? I interrupted him and turned around. He has insight into what, Brody? Alpha Dimitri, Brody said, gulping. He knows him. I snorted and shook my head. I approached my desk and sat down. Does he? I asked mockingly. I am beginning to think that he doesn't know. He didn't even manage to get inside the dungeon. I still couldn't believe how incompetent he really was. He didn't even notice that Dimitri's men were following him everywhere he went. Stupid. Brody furrowed his brows and sighed. What will happen to him? He asked. I don't care, I said. We don't need him and we don't need Janet. Their only task was to keep her away from him. Janet's only task was to get her to leave the pack and she couldn't even do that. I don't need them. They are both useless. The only thing Kendrick knew how to do was suck up and ask for money. He always believed that he had control over the kingdom because he was sucking up to Janet and telling her what her mate should do. But Dimitri's father was smarter than him. He let Janet believe that he was doing things her way when in reality he was doing the complete opposite. The funny thing was, neither Janet nor Kendrick ever noticed. They believed they were in charge and they never cared to actually look into what Alpha Dominic was really doing. Alpha Dominic was a lot of things, but he wasn't an idiot. So you will let Dimitri kill Janet and Savannah? Brody asked, furrowing his brows. What about your child? He needs his mother. I rolled my eyes at Brody. I am not even sure if that pup is mine, I said. Savannah and everything. Besides, Dimitri found him a good home. He is better off with them than with Savannah. I looked back out the window and smiled. Also, the only pups I will have will be with her, I said and my heart skipped a beat. She will be the mother of my children, no one else. Kendrick never figured out that all of this was about her, did her? Brody mumbled, making me look back at him. I sighed and shook my head. I already told you that he is useless, I said. All he cares about is that throne and the power he thinks he would have over me. He completely missed the whole point. That throne would be mine, of course, but that was only an added bonus. My main prize was her. My main desire was her. And you let him believe that it was all about the throne, Brody said, smirking a little. That was smart. I laughed and leaned back in my chair. Of course it was smart, I said. I am not a stupid man, Brody. If I had told him what this whole thing is really about, he would never be so keen to help me. He wants her too. He believes that we will all have her. Do you think that he would be okay with me taking her for myself? Brody shook his head. His only motivation is power, Brody, I added, sighing quietly. Everyone is motivated by something. I was smart enough to use his motives to my advantage. Letting him believe that this was all about the throne and letting him believe that he would have some kind of power in my kingdom was the best thing I could have done. Kendrick was so easy to manipulate and so was Janet. When she saw how much she looked like her mother, Janet lost it completely. All she was talking about was Mike remembering his fated mate and wanting her. Sometimes I wondered if Janet even understood what being dead meant. But I wasn't complaining. Her jealousy served its purpose. Too bad that neither Kendrick nor Janet completed their tasks completely. What about the rogues? Brody asked after a few moments of silence. Kill them all, I said. We won't need them again after tonight and I am not paying them what I promised. I am not an idiot. Brody furrowed his brows a little. Are you sure that we won't need them? Brody asked. What if he attacks? I snorted and shook my head. He won't get a chance to attack, Brody, I said. I will have what he treasures most. I will blackmail him and he will give me his throne in a blink of an eye. And then? Brody asked. And then I will kill him, I said, smirking. I will make him watch as I FK his mate and then I will end his life. I will make him think that he will get her back, but that will never happen. I could already imagine it happening and I got hard instantly. I couldn't wait until I was buried deep inside her. I am excited for you, Alpha, Brody said, giving me a small smile. You deserve this. I smiled back at him. I deserve her, I said. She was always supposed to be mine. The goddess made a mistake by giving her to him. She was meant to be mine and she would be mine. I looked through the window and took a deep breath. Only a few more hours. Only a few more hours and she would finally be here. Only a few more hours and I would finally see her again. Only a few more hours and I would finally taste her lips. I closed my eyes and tightened my jaw. Those few hours would be the longest and the slowest hours of my life. Another attack. Madeline's POV. I am so excited about tonight. Luna Alice exclaimed. Do you know who is working with whom? I smiled and shook my head. I believe they will decide that once the challenge starts, I said. That's a part of it actually. They need to figure out how to work together to find the object hidden in the forest. Luna Alice nodded. Oh, so exciting. I can't wait to see who will win. I am sure that everyone will want Alpha Theodore's warrior on their team, Luna Maria chuckled as she took another sip of her drink. Luna Alice nodded. Oh, definitely. It will be so interesting to see how they will decide. I smiled at them and glanced at Dimitri. He was only a few steps away from me. He was talking to Alphas Theodore and Lincoln. I couldn't hear what they were talking about, but Dimitri was smiling and I relaxed a little. He was too tense ever since we came to the throne room. He refused to let go of me for the first half an hour. I barely managed to convince him to let me step away so I could talk to the Lunas. I am so happy for you, honey, Luna Maria said as she wrapped an arm around Ali's shoulders. Betrayal seems like an amazing man. Ali blushed a little and nodded. He is. I am so incredibly happy I get to call him my mate. Will marked Ali last night and I was over the moon happy for both of them. Will was an incredible man and he deserved the best mate and Ali was surely the best. I was convinced that Ali was perfect for him. I was convinced that Will was perfect for Ali. The goddess really made a perfect match by bonding them together. And he is happy he gets to call you his mate, I said, making Ali look at me. You are his perfect match. He is incredibly lucky he has you in his life. Ali smiled and shook her head. How do you know all that? She asked. We talk, I said, smiling brightly. The administrative stuff sometimes gets boring and Will loves to share. Ali and the Lunas laughed. Oh, the only part of being a Luna I hate is the administration, Luna Laura said, shaking her head. If I could just pass that along to someone else, I would be so happy. Well, you will get to do that soon, won't you? Luna Alice asked, smiling. How old is your boy now? He is 17, she said, smiling proudly. Xavier started training him a year ago. He will take over as soon as he turns 18. Let's hope he will find his mate soon, Luna Alice chuckled. You will get a well-deserved break then. Luna Laura smiled and nodded. I can't wait, trust me. I glanced at Luna Jennifer and saw her staring at her mate with an unreadable expression on her face. I wished that I could read her mind, but Dimitri was here and I couldn't hear anything. Where is your friend, my queen? Luna Alice asked, making me look back at them. Ellie, right. She is your beta's sister. I smiled and nodded. Yes, she is, I said. She is helping with the challenge tonight. She is in charge of the hidden object. I heard that she is an amazing warrior, Luna Laura said. She completed Michael's elite warrior program, didn't she? She did, Ali said, and I could hear how proud she was. She really is amazing. And where is Michael tonight? Luna Alice said, looking around. I haven't seen him yet. He is also helping out, I said, giving her a small smile. He is out in the forest with our warriors. They will make sure that the contestants follow every rule. Oh, Luna Alice said, nodding her head. You thought of everything, didn't you? I smiled and she was just about to say something else when a couple of loud growls interrupted us. My heart raced and I looked at Dimitri. He was already standing next to me. Everyone moved at the same time. What happened? I asked as he picked me up and rushed out of the throne room. I watched as Will did the same with Ali. Everyone in the throne room started panicking. The rogues are attacking at the border, Dimitri growled. There are hundreds of them. My heart stopped beating. I wasn't even aware that we were already in our room. Dimitri put me down and cupped my cheeks. You will lock those doors and you won't let anyone inside, he said. Do you understand me, Maddie? I grabbed his wrists tightly. Ellie is out there, Will mumbled angrily as he ran inside the room, holding Ali in his arms. We can't leave them alone. Dimitri tightened his jaw and looked at him. We don't have any other choice, he said. Everyone we trust is out there. I will keep her safe, Ali said, hugging Will tightly. Don't worry. We will be okay. Dimitri looked back at me and gulped. Did you understand, Maddie? He asked. You will open those doors for me or for Will. No one else. I nodded and tightened my hold on him. I wanted to tell him to stay, but I knew he had to go. He had to defend his pack. He had to defend his kingdom. Come back to me, I mumbled as I felt tears fall down my cheeks. Dmitri smiled and wiped the tears from my face. Always, my princess, he said softly. I will always come back to you. He leaned in and kissed me softly. You are my home, he said quietly. You and our pup are my home. He added through the mind link as he kissed me again. Nothing will stop me from coming back to you. I love you, I told him, my voice trembling. He smiled and kissed my forehead. I thought that my heart would give out when he moved his hands from my face. I barely managed to force myself to let go of his wrists. Will, he said as he rushed to the door. We need to hurry. Will kissed Ali one more time before he ran out behind Dmitri. Ali took a deep breath as she approached the door. She closed and locked it before turning around to look at me. Everything will be okay, Maddie, she said quietly. They will be okay. I couldn't stop the tears from falling down my cheeks. Oh, Mads, Ali mumbled as she approached me and pulled me into a hug. I wrapped my arms around her and buried my nose into her neck. I sobbed quietly and she rubbed my back. He will come back to you, Maddie, Ali said softly. He is the king. Rogues have nothing on him. I knew that. My mate was strong. He was a great warrior. I knew that he would come back home to me. I knew that he would be okay. He had to be okay. But I just couldn't stop the tears. They just kept coming against my will. I forced myself to take a deep breath. I released it slowly and gulped. I am sorry, Ali, I mumbled as I let her go. I don't know what came over me. She sighed and took my hand in hers. Why are you apologizing? She asked, chuckling a little. Friends are meant to comfort each other. I am always here for you, Mads. You know that. I smiled and another tear fell on my cheek. Ali wiped it away. I took another deep breath and I was just about to tell Ali how grateful I am to have her when a knock on the door made me freeze. Ali tensed up and looked at the door. Maddie. Luna Maria's voice made me sigh in relief. Are you in here? I looked at Ali and she bit her lower lip. It's Luna Maria, I said quietly. We know her. Ali furrowed her brows and looked at the door again. Dmitri said not to let anyone in, she reminded me. Maddie. Luna Maria called me again. I sighed and shook my head a little. We can't leave her out there, I mumbled as I approached the door and unlocked it. Oh, you are okay, she sighed in relief as I opened the door. I glanced behind her and saw that she was alone. I was so worried that something happened, she said. All the alphas just ran out screaming something about a rogue attack at the border. I opened the door a bit more and stepped aside so she could walk in. Where are the other Lunas? I asked as I closed the door. I heard a loud thump behind me. I turned around in time to see Ali falling to the floor. I didn't have time to react before I felt something pinch my neck and everything went dark. Something isn't right. Dmitri's POV. I sank my canines into another rogue's neck, biting through all the flesh and bone. His body went limp in my mouth. I grabbed him and tossed him to the side. I looked around me and saw my warriors and my guests fighting with the rogues. We were winning, but something about all this didn't feel right. I had a bad feeling in my stomach ever since Will and I arrived at the border. I thought it was because I had to leave Maddie, but the more I thought about it the more I realized that wasn't the reason. Will? I mind-linked him as I sank my canines into another one of the rogues coming at me. Yes? he responded, panting a little. Something isn't right. I mumbled. Look at how they are behaving. A rogue came at me. He barely attacked even though he was a big wolf and he could have done some damage. He snapped his canines at me, missing my arm for only an inch. But it seemed like it was on purpose. He could have hurt me if he wanted to. What was going on? What are you talking about? Will asked. I killed the rogue that was attacking me and I looked around until I saw Will. He was fighting with one of the rogues, but the rogue wasn't causing nearly as much damage as he could have. Look at the way he is fighting, Will. I said as I started moving toward him. He is only taunting you. He isn't attacking with full force. Will glanced at me before he finished killing the rogue. My stomach twisted and turned. Something wasn't right. Did anyone enter the pack house? I mind-linked the warriors I left to guard the woman and children. I told them not to let anyone other than women and children in. I made sure that every alpha was out there fighting. I wasn't going to let anyone stay behind. I wasn't going to risk anyone getting to Maddie while I was gone. One of the biggest flaws of my pack house was the absence of a safe room in case of an attack. My grandfather never built one. He believed that the war was over. He believed that we wouldn't have to hide from anyone anymore. My father thought about building it when the number of rogues started growing, but he gave up on the idea after a while. The rogues never attacked and my father was proud of the peace he kept after his father passed away. As far as I knew, none of the packs in my kingdom had safe rooms anymore. I should have known better. I should have built one as soon as I became the king. But I had confidence in my warriors. They wouldn't let anyone get inside. No, Alpha. One of the warriors responded. Everything is okay here. A small wave of relief washed over me. What about Kendrick or any members of the council? I asked, making my way to Will. Did they come there? No, Alpha. The warrior responded. We haven't seen them. I growled as another rogue jumped at me. I killed him with one swipe of my paw. I started running faster. I needed to get to Will. I want to go back, Will. I told him. Our warriors can handle this. There aren't many left. Will glanced at me and nodded. He finished killing the rogue he was fighting with. Don't kill them all. I ordered through the mind link. Capture some of them and bring them to the dungeon. We need to know who sent them. Yes, Alpha. My warriors mind-linked me back simultaneously. Will approached me, killing 2 more rogues on his way over. Is Maddie okay? Mike mind-linked me. Yes. I said as Will and I started running back. She is in our room with Ellie. No one entered the pack house. Good. Mike said. Are you going back? Yes. I answered. Make sure to take some of them to the dungeons. We need as much information as we can get. Yes, Alpha. Mike said, cutting our mind link. Will and I shifted back as soon as we were away from the battlefield. I could still hear screaming, shouting, and breaking of bones. I could still smell the blood in the air. Will and I put our sweats on and we continued running toward the house. Maddie? I mind-linked her. I was now finally able to mind-link her. I didn't want to do that before. I didn't want her to worry. I expected her to respond immediately and my heart clenched when she didn't. Maddie? I mind-linked her again. I am coming back, princess. I am okay. My legs almost gave out when she didn't respond. Madeline? I tried again. Answer me. I was sure I was going to pass out when she didn't. Why wasn't she answering me? Mind link Allie, I told Will as I started running faster. Maddie isn't responding to me. Will growled and picked up his pace. I kept glancing at him, waiting for him to tell me what Allie had told him. I knew that something was wrong when he narrowed his eyes and clenched his fists. What did she say? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Nothing, Will growled. She isn't responding either. I can't feel Sky, Skol mumbled and I almost lost it. I can't feel her, Dimitri. No. No, 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 no. Madeline! I screamed as I started running even faster. Madeline! We were getting close to the pack house. I could already see the lights. I could already see my warriors walking around. They looked up when they heard me screaming. I ran closer, trying so hard to remain focused. I could hear my warriors talking to me, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. I had to get upstairs. I had to find her. Madeline! I screamed as I found myself on our floor. I had no idea how I got there. I couldn't remember climbing the stairs. I practically broke our bedroom door down. Madeline! I screamed, looking around the room. I almost died on the spot when my eyes fell on Allie. Allison! Will screamed, running past me, and throwing himself next to her. I watched him grab her and turn her around. She was breathing, but she was passed out. Allie! Will cried out, patting her cheeks and trying to wake her up. Everything around me slowed down. My heart, my breathing, my mind. Everything felt like it was working in slow motion. Where was she? Where was my Maddie? Where was my princess? Will looked up at me. I saw his lips moving, but I couldn't hear what he was telling me. All I could hear was the desperate thumping of my heart. Where was she? Someone ran inside the room. I didn't see who it was. My vision blurred completely. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't see anything. I was completely overwhelmed by pain. Someone placed their hands on my face. I didn't know who it was. I didn't even know where I was. I lost all the feelings in my legs and I felt something hard under my knees. Skol howled loudly and I let the pain overwhelm me completely. Your queen is missing. William's POV. I was pacing around the room, trying to find some way to remain in focus. Dimitri hadn't stopped whining or growling. I could tell that he was struggling and that he was in immense pain. I knew that he wouldn't be able to do until he came out of the shock he was in. But that was why he had me. I had to take over until he managed to focus back on what mattered the most. She was poisoned with wolfsbane, the pack doctor said as he finished checking up on Allie. The dose wasn't big. She will be okay, Beta. The wolfsbane just needs to leave her body. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I almost lost it when I found her on the floor. But at least I found her. At least she was here. Maddie was gone. She was gone. Thank you, I mumbled as I opened my eyes and looked at my beautiful mate. You can leave. The pack doctor nodded. He glanced at Dimitri before he picked up his bag and walked out of the room. Mike and Ellie walked inside. Both of them looked like they were crying. Anything? I asked and they shook their heads. Her scent disappears at the edge of the forest, Ellie said, looking at Dimitri. There is no way to tell where they took her. I tightened my jaw and ran my fingers through my hair. Our warriors are searching the territory, Mike said, his voice laced with fear and worry. We covered as much of the border as we could. They won't be able to get her out of our pack if they are still here. I looked at Dmitri and took a deep breath. He was standing by the window and staring at the forest. He almost left to go find her, but I stopped him. I couldn't let him go until he was completely focused. I couldn't let anything happen to him. I was his beta and I needed to protect him. I couldn't let him get hurt. Maddie would kill me if I let him get hurt. Dmitri, I called him, but he interrupted me. Gather every alpha and bring them into the throne room, Dmitri said, his voice void of any emotion. I am keeping them hostage until we find her. I looked at Mike and gulped. You can't, Mike started speaking, but Dmitri interrupted him again. One of them took her, he said, turning around to look at us. They will bring her back to me, or I will burn them all. They will burn together with that throne they wanted so bad. Dmitri looked like a shell of himself. Every emotion in his eyes was gone. He looked like he aged in the last half an hour. He looked like he was on the verge of breaking. If you accuse them, I tried to reason with him, but he interrupted me with an order. Gather them, he said, narrowing his eyes at me. Right now. I had no other choice, but to listen to him. My body started moving on its own. I took a deep breath and released it slowly as I walked downstairs. Every packhouse worker and every single warrior I passed asked about Maddie. All of them had tears in their eyes. All of them looked so worried. I had to ignore them if I ever wanted to make my way to the throne room. We will find her. I mind-linked them all, trying to sound confident. Just go do your jobs, okay? Your alpha needs you to keep everything in order. That's the best you can do to help him. I walked inside the throne room and saw that every single one of our guests was already there. Will! Alpha Theodore exclaimed. Where is our queen? They are all here, Dmitri. I mind-linked him, but he didn't respond. Who took her? Alpha Lucius asked. How did they get inside the pack? We need to search the forest. Alpha Alistair said. Did you send anyone there yet? I raised my hands, motioning for them to stop. I couldn't answer all of their questions at the same time. We sent our warriors to find her, I said calmly. We don't know who. I was interrupted when the door burst open and a very angry Dmitri ran inside. He wasn't void of any emotion anymore. He was filled with anger. Mike was behind him and he looked as angry as Dmitri. Allie? I mind-linked Mike. She is still asleep. He responded. Ellie stayed with her. I gulped and forced myself to focus back on Dmitri. One of you took her and I want her back, Dmitri growled loudly. I swear to Goddess, I will burn you alive if you don't bring my maid back to me. He narrowed his eyes, looking around the room and growling. Some of our guests gasped. Everyone was shocked. I know that one of you is, he spoke, but he suddenly stopped talking. I furrowed my brows and looked at him. He was looking around, gritting his teeth and clenching his fists tightly. Where is Alpha Jack? Dmitri asked and my heart stopped beating. I looked at our guests, but I couldn't find Alpha Jack. I couldn't see his beta or his Luna either. Where is Alpha Jack? Dmitri screamed, making everyone flinch and bow their heads. His aura filled the room to the point where I started sweating. His anger was making it hard for all of us to breathe. They took her, Mike mumbled. That was why they opened the bedroom door. They trusted them. I saw him on the battlefield, Alpha Theodore mumbled quietly. He was there at the beginning, yes, Alpha Lucius said. But he wasn't with us when we were coming back. But why would they take her? Luna Jennifer asked quietly. What do they want to do with her? They want my throne, Dmitri said. They want to use her as a way for me to give up my title and my kingdom. Almost everyone in the room gasped. That is betrayal, my king. Alpha Xavier exclaimed. He is a traitor. And he betrayed us all. Alpha Lincoln added angrily. If you betray our king, you betray every single one of us. Yes. Traitor. He betrayed our king. He betrayed our kingdom. Everyone started shouting at the same time. We will find him, my king. Alpha Lucius shouted. He won't get away with this. Dmitri tightened his jaw and looked at me. Do you trust them? I asked. Do you think that one of them was working with him? Dmitri didn't get a chance to respond. The throne room door opened and Landon and Ryan ran inside. My king! Landon exclaimed, his eyes wide. Your royal secretary Kendrick is dead. He was killed. My eyes widened. The room was silent for a moment, but then everyone started shouting again. Betrayal! We will find him and kill him. He has our queen. He killed a member of the council. I looked at Dmitri and saw him gritting his teeth. He took a deep breath and growled so loudly that I saw a couple of betas and lunas cover their ears. Your queen is missing, Dmitri said, his voice cold and filled with hatred. I want you to use every single one of your resources to find her. I want you to help me bring her home. He didn't take her to his pack. He isn't that stupid. Do whatever you need to do to find her. He didn't wait for anyone to respond. He turned around and rushed out of the throne room. Show me Kendrick's body, he shouted on his way out. Landon, Ryan, Mike, and I ran after him. My entire body was shaking with anger and fear. I couldn't even imagine what Dmitri was feeling. He looked like he was on the verge of a complete breakdown. We needed to find Maddie. We needed to find her as soon as possible. Your new home. Madeline's POV. I groaned as I turned my head to my right. Every part of my body hurt. What happened to me? Was it the pregnancy? I had no idea that your body could feel like you'd been hit by a train. I had no idea that your head could hurt like someone stabbed a knife into your temples. Would I have to go through 6 months of that? Hello, my little bird, someone said softly. The voice was both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. I could have sworn that I had heard it before, but I had no idea where. I was probably dreaming. I gulped and felt around for Dmitri. I wanted to press myself closer to him. The pain would be gone as soon as I was in his arms. I couldn't find him, though. Did he get up already? I am here, little bird, the voice said, and I felt a large hand cover mine. I didn't feel tingles. I didn't feel sparks. I knew Dmitri's hand, and this wasn't it. Whose hand was that? Where was I? My heart raced a little. The hand squeezed mine gently and I felt someone's fingers on my forehead. Open those beautiful eyes, little bird, the voice said quietly. I missed them so much. A strange feeling in my stomach made me listen to him. I wanted to know who he was. I wanted to know where Dmitri was. I opened my eyes slowly and the first thing I saw was his small smile. Hello, Madeline, he said, caressing my cheek. How are you feeling? I furrowed my brows a little. I knew this man. Where did I know him from? And then it dawned on me. Cade, I mumbled, my voice hoarse. He smiled brightly and leaned in to kiss my forehead. Hello, my beautiful mate, he said. I am so happy that you recognized me. We haven't seen each other in a while. Mate? He looked back down at me and I glanced behind his shoulder. I was in a strange room. This wasn't my room in my pack house. Where am I? I asked quietly as I looked back at him. He sighed and smiled. You are home, Madeline. You are finally home. Home? That wasn't my home. I felt tears burning the corners of my eyes. Dmitri wasn't here, was he? This man took me from him, didn't he? Do you remember what happened before you woke up here? He asked as he caressed my cheek again. I think that my mom gave you too much wolfsbane. I wanted to move from him, but I couldn't feel my body. I could only feel my heart beating faster and faster as seconds went by. I tried to focus and I tried to remember. We were getting ready to start the second challenge. I was talking to the Luna's end. I gasped quietly as memories started rushing back. The rogue attack. Dmitri taking me to our bedroom. Dmitri telling me not to open the door for anyone other than Will or him. Dmitri leaving. Ali and I staying alone. Someone knocking on the door. Me opening the door and my heart felt like it fell into a bottomless pit. Maria, I mumbled quietly. Kate sighed and gave me a small nod. I am sorry she had to do that, my love, he said. But I wasn't sure if you would agree to go with her. My stomach turned. It was her? She was the traitor? I trusted her. Why would she do that? Oh, I missed you terribly, Cade mumbled as he leaned closer and placed a kiss on my cheek. I couldn't wait to have you back. He missed me? He couldn't wait to have me back? I didn't even know he knew I existed. He never spoke to me when I lived in his pack. You are so beautiful, he said quietly as he rubbed his nose up and down my jaw. You are beautiful and you are mine. My mind was screaming at me to move away from him, but my body was completely frozen. I couldn't feel my arms or my legs. I was in shock. I was in denial. I was refusing to accept that this was really happening. It had to be a dream. It had to be a nightmare. I would open my eyes soon and I would wake up in my mate's arms. Dmitri would smile at me and he would kiss me softly. He would caress my lower belly and tell me how happy he was to become a dad. Did you miss me too? Cade asked, looking up at me. He furrowed his brows and wiped the tears from my face. I didn't even realize I was crying. Why are you crying, beautiful? He asked. Are you in pain? I swallowed the lump in my throat and let a small amount of air into my lungs. Why are you doing this, Cade? I asked. Why did you take me? He sighed and ran his fingers through my hair. Because you are mine, Madeline, he said. You belong to me. You were supposed to be my fated mate. I am just correcting a mistake the goddess made. My heart clenched painfully. I am not, I spoke, but his growl interrupted me. Careful, Madeline, he said, narrowing his eyes slightly. I won't tolerate disrespect. I gulped and tightened my jaw. Did he really believe that I was his mate? I tried to read his mind, but I couldn't focus enough to do it. I was still in pain. I was still in shock. I simply couldn't calm down enough to focus on his thoughts. Cade, please, I said quietly, but he interrupted me again. Nothing you say will make me change my mind, Madeline, he said, caressing my cheek again. You are mine and I am not giving you up. I will have everything now that I have you. By everything, you mean the throne? I asked and he smiled. That's only an added bonus, he said. You are the main prize. My stomach turned again. It will take a while, but you will get used to everything, my beautiful mate," he said. "I am a patient man, don't worry. I will give you time." He stood up and smiled at me. "I am going to get you some food," he said. "You need to eat." I watched as he walked to the door. He looked around the room before he looked back at me. "Feel free to get up and look around the room," he said as he opened the door. "Tell me if you don't like anything. We can change whatever you want. I want you to be comfortable here. This is your new home." He walked out and closed the door behind him. I placed a hand over my mouth to stop a loud sob that tried to escape me. I forced myself to stand up and I walked to the window. My eyes fell on a thick forest that surrounded the house. It looked endless. "Dmitri," I cried out as I placed a hand on my lower belly. "Come get us, please. We need you. Your pup and I need you." Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description.